Hello, this is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business podcast. Thank you for taking a few moments to listen in today. On today's podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to collect and put together in preparation for your taxes. As I record this, we're coming up to the end of the year, and for some of you, this information may be helpful now as you kind of go through and begin to compile information, maybe make decisions as far as what you may do before year end. For others of you may be listening to this after or into the new year, and this may be something that may provide a little bit of a comprehensive list as far as what you need to put together. As an owner of an accounting firm, and we do many tax returns out of our office every year, and a common question we get, even from clients that have been with us for a number of years, is, what do I need to bring to the appointment, or what do I need to provide for you? Most of our clients are not in our area, so they may so they'll provide information to us through a portal. But many of them will ask, well, what do we need to provide? Now, for our clients, and maybe for whoever you use as far as for your tax preparation, they may provide you an organizer. We do that for many of our clients as well. And that can really help to provide a lot of questions and a comprehensive list. What I'm going to try to do today, and this isn't at all extensive, okay? It is a lengthy list, but it's not definitely everything you may need. You may need to provide more as your tax professional may request those from you. But I think this list will really kind of help you provide as you kind of work through this as to what do I need to put together to make sure that I pay the least amount of tax or get the most benefit from my work with my tax professional. So let me kind of just run through this list. Number one, has there been any changes in your family status? So did you get married this past year? Did you have a marital dissolution or divorce this prior year? Separation. Were you separated from your spouse? Do you need to add or remove a dependent? Did someone in the household pass away? Okay, and so did anything in the household change? If something did, it's important to provide the date of the event. So if there was a marital dissolution, for example, what was the date of the dissolution? If you had a child come into the household, whether through birth or through adoption, what was the date of birth? What was what is their social security number, their name? Provide the social security information as well as birth certificates. If you adopted, that information is important as well. The date of the adoption, how much did you spend on the adoption? And then also, if you end up with a dependent that moved into the house, so say, for example, you may have an elderly parent or grandparent that you're taking care of that now lives with you. What was the date that they moved into your home? So all that information is important. So if you had some sort of a change in your household, to make sure that you notify your tax professional. Secondly, you have a change in a job, any sort of change in address. We've had a number of our clients move to states like Florida and Texas from other states, and that's important information to provide. When did you move? So make sure that the right state tax returns are filed. And then, of course, obviously to update the return as well. Did you receive any unemployment? Make sure you bring your unemployment document, to provide that information. Next, did you make any sort of retirement contribution? And for most of these need to be done by the end of the year if you're if you have a 401k at work. And of course, you have up until the time that you file your tax return, if you file it in a normal timeline, if you want to make those contributions, if it's an IRA, for example, after the first of the year. So any sort of retirement contributions, health savings account contributions, make sure you provide that information. Or did you do any sort of a rollover? Okay, and so if you receive the distribution from your retirement account, you receive a 1099-R for that. Make sure that is provided. Next, did you receive any Social Security benefits? We had probably, maybe 3 or 4 clients this last year who started receiving Social Security but didn't provide us the 1099. And so it just ended up getting missed. They ended up getting letters from the IRS. So you started collecting Social Security. Make sure that you provide the 1099 SSA form. It's a pink form that the Social Security Administration sends out in January if you were the recipient of any sort of Social Security benefits, whether Social Security benefits or SSDI. Next, did you buy or sell any stocks, bonds, mutual funds, etc.? This is extremely important. When you go through and you purchase stocks, bonds, etc., make sure you keep that information. Okay, because sometimes when you get the information on the back end after you sell it, that information is either missing or maybe incorrect. So make sure you hold on to that information and provide that information. Many times, as we do for our clients, we'll keep that information stored. So if they end up selling that stock, bonds, mutual funds, et cetera, at some point down the road, we can look back and find the information if they don't have it as to the date of purchase. And of course, if you sold any information, whether it's a broker or you'll receive some sort of a document, usually in January, and then sometimes afterwards in regards to those transactions, the details of those transactions. Make sure that is provided. Virtual currency, cryptocurrency. Of course, this is something that a lot more people are investing in. Probably not as much now, since we're kind of seeing that whole kind of that cryptocurrency world fall apart in recent days. But I know for many of our clients, they're kind of selling off a lot of it and doing some tax loss harvesting. But if you have any sort of virtual currency, most of these platforms are just horrible at providing the information that you need in order to prepare your tax returns. So you need to make sure, for some of our clients, they may do it in a spreadsheet as far as the date did they purchase that cryptocurrency, when did they sell it? Okay, because a lot of people, they kind of buy and sell this quite frequently. Make sure you keep track of your virtual currency or cryptocurrency transactions. Next, were you a recipient or did you receive a distribution from an inheritance or a trust? Many times you'll receive a K-1, but that's important information. Did you give or did you make any sort of gifts, or did you receive any sort of gifts that are over $16,000? If you did, there may be gift tax exposure. The gift tax is assessed to the person who is the giver, not the recipient. Okay, so if you gave someone over $16,000, it could be cash or property, something of value over $16,000 during the course of the year. We'll need to provide the recipient's name, the donee name, the cash amount that was given to them, property description, and also, if it was property, the basis of the property. Next, did you do a 1031 exchange? So some sort of a trade of real property. So you had some sort of investment property, and then you sold it and bought a subsequent one. You used a qualified intermediary. Make sure that information is provided. So the date of the sale, the amount of the purchase of the new property, the information from the qualified intermediary, the sales documents, as well as the purchase documents of the new property. Make sure all that information is provided. Next, any sort of business records that you have. So if you started a business during the course of the year, when did you form that business? Okay, and then also, if you end up closing a business, what was the termination date of the business? To provide the necessary financial records, so profit and loss statements, balance sheets, to make sure that information is provided. Necessary substantiation that may be provided, mileage records, maybe receipts, information that may be needed by the tax professional. A big change this year is the 1099-K. So if you received over $600, from PayPal or Venmo or one of these payment platforms, they're going to send you a 1099-K. Make sure that information is provided as well. If you're buying and selling, you have inventory. Okay, make sure you have your inventory number at the end of the year. So here upcoming this next week, is when I record this, is the end of the year. Make sure you go through and you count your inventory. And you know what that number is. Your mileage by month. And the reason I say that is there was a change in the mileage rate in the middle of the year. So make sure that you provide your mileage and it's broken down, if not by month, at least the first half of the year and the second half of the year. If you have a home office that inside of your house, what is the square footage of that area used exclusively for business? And then what is the square footage of the home? And then if you're going to use, if you're not going to use a simplified method, you want to use the actual cost method. That information is still needed, but also we'll need utility bills, mortgage interest, everything as it relates to the home to be able to take the full benefit there. Any sort of lawsuit settlements, prizes received, lottery or gambling winnings. Okay, if you're a gambler and you go to the boats or to a casino, they're going to provide you a 1099 basically at the point that you end up cashing out. Okay, make sure that you hold on to those and that those are provided. If you received any sort of a lawsuit settlement, make sure that information is provided as well. You should receive a 1099 for those, but make sure that information is provided. If you have a rental property or some sort of investment property, make sure you provide the income and the expenses. If you purchased a new property, what was the date of the purchase? What did you purchase it for? What sort of cost did you have as it relates to rehab or improvements into the property? So make sure all that information is provided, as well as the income detail as to the income and the expenses classified by expense category. Next, health insurance. So if you purchased health insurance, make sure that you provide the information. If you bought insurance on the exchange, this is another area where Sometimes we have an issue with clients providing us that information. If you went onto the marketplace and you purchased the insurance through the marketplace, you're going to receive a 1095 form. Okay, so Form 1095 does need to be provided because that gives the amount of credits. Bottom line, if your preparer is filing electronically, which they should be doing, that'll actually reject if you bought insurance on the marketplace and you didn't provide the form. So make sure that you provide, once you receive it, hold on to it, make sure that it's handed over to your tax professional. Your medical, dental, drug costs that you spent throughout the course of the year, kind of keep track of those. They may be used if you itemize and you have enough of them, but just kind of keep track of those and provide that information. Next, provide any sort of state income tax paid. This includes if you paid in the prior year. So if you paid your 2021 taxes, state taxes in 2022, make sure that information is provided if you had a balance due on your 2021 return as far as for the taxes. That information, as well as any sort of estimated tax payment that were made during the course of the year, that information should be provided. Any sort of property taxes on your residence, sales tax or excise tax paid on vehicles. So all that information can be provided. If you itemize, those will all be useful. Home mortgage interest. So if you have a mortgage on your residence, the mortgage company will send you a Form 1098. Make sure that information is provided. It gives the amount of mortgage interest that was paid, and then if your property taxes are paid out of escrow, will provide that detail as well. Next, if you're a first-time home buyer and you took a distribution from your IRA, make sure that information is provided. Or if there's any sort of repayment or recapture of the 2008 first-time home buyer's credit, if you ended up either selling or changing the use of that property, make sure that information is provided as well. Next, charitable contribution information. So if you give over $250, you should have received a confirmation of the contribution. So provide those documents. If you have smaller amounts, need to know the dates, the amount of the contribution, okay, and that information. So the detail of all the information. So what was the name of the organization that you gave the money or the property to? What was the date? And what was the value? If it's cash, simple enough. But if it was if say, for example, you go through and you have a local nonprofit thrift store that you donate to, there does need to be a description of everything that was given, and then essentially the value of those items that were given. All that detail is extremely important. Okay. If you had any sort of charitable miles, so maybe you serve on a nonprofit board and you have charitable miles, for example, you can provide that information. If you made any sort of a transfer from your IRA to a nonprofit, okay, that information should be provided as well. You're going to receive a 1099, and then if you're over a certain age, that would be a non-taxable transaction. Next, any sort of educational expenses that were paid, and this would include anything from college, university down. If it was at the college level, you receive a 1098T, and then a 1099Q. May be received if it's from a 529 plan, for example. And then you get the school transcript that shows the amount that was paid during the course of the year, or some sort of other verification of the expenses. So maybe when they go and you pay the bill at the bursar's office, for example, provide all that information. Next, any sort of student loan interest paid, you should receive a 1098E for that. Child care or care for a dependent. That information may provide a deduction for you as well, but we'll need the name of the provider, the address, their tax ID number. So if it's an individual, social security number; if it's an entity, their tax ID number, and then the amount that you paid during the course of the year to the provider. Next, information on any sort of energy credits or deductions. Okay, so this would include if you bought an electric vehicle at the end of the year, you put solar in your home, made any sort of qualified electrical improvements inside of your home, there may be a deduction or a credit for that. So make sure you hold on to that and provide that information. Next, did you file bankruptcy during the course of the year? If you did, need the date of the filing as well as the bankruptcy order. Any sort of debt forgiveness or property abandonment. Okay, so if you had a situation where maybe there was a foreclosure or something to that effect, you'll need to provide the paperwork from the bank. There may have been a 1099 form issued to you, and then as well as the date that the bank took possession of the property or sold the property. Have you received any sort of correspondence from the IRS or for the state? You receive something, turn it over. right away. And then if you have an IRS PIN, an identity PIN, okay, make sure that information is provided because your return can't get filed without that PIN. And that would get sent to you in January as well. And lastly here, any information on foreign accounts. So if you have a foreign bank account overseas, if at any point during the course of the year it was over $10,000 in U.S. equivalent, okay, there's an FBAR report does need to be filed. Okay, so make sure that information is provided. So that would be the bank name, their address, your account number, and then the balance in the account at the highest point during the course of the year. Do you have any sort of foreign business interest or any sort of stock overseas that's in value of over $50,000, or you're a signer on a foreign account? All that information is important. Make sure you provide that information. I'm not going to run through the list again, but there's about 30 items on here as it relates to items that you may need to provide as it relates to for your particular meeting. And of course, you're going to, W-2s, 1099s, all those types of things, those tax documents you received, make sure those are provided, and then any sort of substantiation. And hopefully, as we kind of rattle through this list, maybe there's an item or two that may trigger some thought, and would encourage you as you work through finishing up this year and at the first part of next year. If you have any questions, reach out to your tax professional and any sort of planning that needs to be done to make sure that it's done here quickly. Once again, this is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business podcast. Thank you for taking a few moments to listen in today. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Have a wonderful day.